Okay, we're going to talk about growing herbs in containers, and basically, first of all you want to know about what size the plant's going to be when it's mature. So we start off with sage here, the broadleaf sage. This is a big shrub. It grows maybe 3 feet in diameter and 2-3 feet high. So you want to put that in a container on its own. Don't mix it with anything else because it'll dominate and suppress anything else in that container. You want a really good sized container, about 18 inches to 2 feet in diameter. And the sort of compost you use should be just a standard, well-drained, preferably loam-based compost, none of these multi-purpose composts, loam-based compost, because loam gives the soil structure and body and resistance to P's and D's. P's and D's in horticultural terminology means pests and diseases. So try to put some loam into your compost in your container, and it makes quite a difference. But moving down to some of the smaller herbs, like the thymes here, these grow about 1 foot high and 1 foot in diameter. So, and right here we've got oregano, which is quite a small plant, growing a maximum of again about 1 foot. So these three you could put into one container, perhaps 12 to 18 inches in diameter. Again, using the same principle of a good quality, preferably loam-based compost. If you're in a high rainfall area, add a little grit in with the compost. So these can go on their own. This sort of plant, like the French sorrel or the buckerleaf sorrel, tends to ramble around a fair amount. So because of that, for the same reason that the sage should be on its own, this should be on its own in a smaller container. Otherwise, it'll look fine in the first year, but in the second year it'll be all over the pot and suppressing other plants within that pot. So French sorrel, put it on its own. But plants like French tarragon and Scots lavish, they're quite small, so again, a smaller container for that one. So if we're thinking about parsley, sage, rosemary and thyme, parsley could go on its own in its own container. That likes quite a fertile soil, while generally speaking the herbs like a more to moderate soil. But let's talk about rosemary, which is an evergreen shrub, quite a big one. That needs to go in its own container. A well-drained soil, a neutral soil, as you have around here. If you can't get hold of a loam-based compost, get a multi-purpose compost, and then just dig some soil from your border and riddle it out, sieve it out, and mix it in to the multi-purpose compost. But put it down at the bottom of the container, because that will contain weeds, which will come through if you put them at the top. A multi-purpose compost is sterile, doesn't contain any weeds. So try to do that with the rosemary. And there's rosemaries and rosemaries. If you go to a garden centre, you get rosemary. If you come to a place on the Black Isle, which specialises in herbs, you'll get 8 varieties of rosemary, starting from the big wild rosemary to a Miss Jessup's rosemary, which goes 6 feet high, and then a Corsican blue rosemary, which goes about 3 feet high, a Benedict blue rosemary, which has got a much sweeter flavour. And if you're into herbs in a sort of delicate sort of way, Benedict blue makes a delicious tea. And remember, rosemary is for remembrance. And if you want to stimulate the memory, and this has been proven in a clinical trial, that rosemary will help with dementia and remembrance as a whole. So there's Benedict blue, and then further down the scale, there's some minimal rosemaries, such as the prostrate rosemary, and even a rosemary from the mountains of Spain called White Mountain. And you grow this in a container, and it sort of fold its way down the edge of the pot and look fantastic on the patio. So that's Poyntzfield rosemaries, just here.